Many years ago, there was a framed poem hanging on the wall in my mother's office. It was titled, "Children Learn What They Live." At the time, I didn't think much about it. I understood it as a piece of parenting advice. If children grow up around kindness, they learn kindness. If they grow up around criticism, they learn criticism. It all seemed fairly obvious. As I've gotten older, though, I've come to believe that the poem wasn't really about children at all. It was about people. Because the truth is, we never really stop learning from the world around us. Think about your first day at a new job. Someone probably handed you an employee handbook. There was probably an orientation. They explained the policies, the procedures, the expectations, all of it in corporate clarity. But let's be honest. How long did it take before you realized that the handbook wasn't the thing teaching you how the job really worked? Instead, you watched the people around you. You watched how experienced employees handled customers. You watched how they spoke to one another. You watched what they laughed about. You watched what they ignored. You watched what rules everyone followed and which rules nobody seemed to care about. Without anyone saying it out loud, you were learning the real culture of that workplace. Now, I don't care if it was a factory, a school, a church, a military unit, a McDonald's, or a casino floor. The same thing happens everywhere. People learn by living inside a culture long before they understand it intellectually. That's one of the reasons I think our modern culture struggles so much to pass on values. We often assume that if we explain something well enough, people will adopt it. But that's rarely how human beings work. We imitate long before we analyze. A child doesn't study hospitality, he experiences it. A young woman doesn't learn integrity because someone defined the word. She learns it because she grows up around people who keep their word. That's how our ancestors learned almost everything that mattered. Long before there were schools, long before there were textbooks, there was quite simply life. Children watched, then they became adults, and one day they realized they were the ones being watched. The same thing happens in families. Parents spend a tremendous amount of time trying to teach their children the right things. And that's important. We should absolutely teach. We should explain. We should answer questions. But if our actions consistently contradict our words, our actions win every single time. You can tell your child that honesty matters, then let them hear you lie to someone on the phone. Guess which lesson sticks? You can tell them that family is important, then spend every evening staring at your phone instead of talking to them. Guess which lesson they're going to remember? You can tell them that generosity matters, or patience, or respect. But if they never actually see those things lived, they remain simply ideas. Children don't inherit our beliefs. They inherit our habits. The really interesting part is, adults, they aren't any different. We like to think that maturity somehow makes us immune to this. It doesn't. Walk into a healthy organization and you'll slowly become healthier. Walk into a dishonest organization and you'll begin making excuses you never thought you'd make. Spend enough time around people who constantly complain, and complaining starts to feel normal. Spend enough time around people who solve problems, and you will begin looking for solutions instead of someone to blame. Human beings are incredibly adaptive creatures. That's actually one of our greatest strengths, but it's also one of our greatest dangers. Because we don't merely shape our environment shapes us. This is one of the reasons our ancestors gathered together. Not because gathering itself was magical, not because ritual alone was enough, but because culture has always been transmitted through shared life. A young person learned hospitality because they experienced hospitality. They learned courage because they saw courage. They learned generosity because they lived among generous people. They learned responsibility because everyone around them carried responsibility. Very little of that requires any formal instruction. What it truly requires is immersion. One of the great misunderstandings of modern life is the belief that information changes people. Information matters. Books matter. Education matters. I write books. I make these firesides. Obviously, I believe ideas matter. But ideas only become part of a person's character when they are consistently reinforced by experience. Reading about honor is not the same thing as living among honorable people. Reading about discipline isn't the same as watching disciplined people every day. Reading about generosity is not the same thing as repeatedly receiving and experiencing generosity from others. Knowledge can certainly inform us, but experience, that transforms us. I've seen this in almost every part of my own life. In martial arts, there were techniques you could learn from books, but the character of a martial artist is never learned from a book. It was learned from our instructors, from the older students, from the expectations of the school. In real estate, there are contracts, laws, and procedures that every agent has to know. But trust is not built because someone memorized the rules. Trust is built because clients experience honesty, consistency, competence, reliability. At the casino, new dealers learn procedures, but they also learn attitudes. They learn whether professionalism is expected, whether shortcuts are tolerated, whether helping one another is normal, or whether everyone simply looks out for themselves. The same is true everywhere. The written rules tell us what should happen. The lived culture teaches us what actually happens. That should make all of us just a little uncomfortable. because every one of us is contributing to someone else's culture, whether we realize it or not. If you're a parent, you're teaching. If you're a grandparent, you're teaching. If you're a supervisor, you're teaching. If you are the experienced employee, you're teaching. If you're the older sibling, you're teaching. If you're active in a tribe or religious organization, you're teaching. Even if you never intended to, someone is learning from watching you. Here's something worth thinking about. Most people spend far more time trying to convince others than they spend trying to become the sort of person others naturally want to imitate. Well, that's just backwards. The strongest cultures in history were not held together by endless persuasion. They were held together because virtue became the norm. People simply grew up inside it. It surrounded them. It shaped them. It became the air they breathed. This is one of the reasons I've spent so much time talking about worth over the past year. Worth isn't something we declare. It's something people experience. You don't convince people you're dependable. You become dependable. You don't convince people you're generous. You either become generous or you don't. You don't convince people you're honorable. You live honorably long enough that no explanation is necessary. People believe what they consistently witness. Think about the people who had the greatest influence in your life. It probably wasn't because they gave the greatest speeches. It probably wasn't because they won every argument. It was likely because they lived in a way that quietly demonstrated something worth remembering. Maybe they worked hard. Maybe they kept their promises. Maybe they remained really calm under pressure. Maybe they treated everyone with dignity. Whatever it was, you saw it. And because you saw it often enough, part of it became part of you. That old poem has stayed with me for decades. Not because I can recite every line, because gods know I can't, but because its central idea has proven itself true time and time again. People become what they consistently live among. Children do. Adults do. Families do. Tribes do. Businesses do. Entire civilizations, they do. We often imagine culture is created by great speeches, by books, by policies, or by laws. Now those things all have their place, but culture is really built in ordinary moments. It's built when promises are kept, when guests are welcomed, when work is done well even though no one is watching, when mistakes are admitted instead of hidden, when responsibility is accepted instead of avoided. Those moments become habits. Habits become expectations. Expectations become culture, and eventually, nobody remembers who started it. They simply say, that's just how we do things. Which brings us back to that old poem. Maybe it was never really about children. Maybe it was always about us. Because every one of us is teaching something every day, whether we intend to or not. The real question is, what is it that you are teaching without speaking?